This is completely irrelevant information that you probably don't even need, but the other day, I think like 3 days ago, I went and got my septum pierced, and I've kind of been having an internal battle with myself over whether I like both, like having both the nostril piercing and the septum piercing in at the same time. Like one side of me is like, yeah, I mean, you look like a badass, like that looks awesome, and then the other side of me is like, why would you want like two of the exact same like silver hoops like both in such a close like proximity to each other? Like that just looks fucking weird, like stop it. So right now I just have the septum ring in. See, yeah, this is completely irrelevant. But if you notice something slightly different about my face, I don't even know how many people really notice nose rings, but that is why. It's pretty much just been a thing that's been floating around in the back of my head. It's like something that maybe I would want to do, like since I even got my nose piercing 3 years ago, so I just figured, you know what? Fuck it, I'm just gonna like do it and see how it looks. So I did, and I actually really like it, but I'm still, you know, as I said, trying to decide whether I should leave my other one in or not. And if you ever see me in person or are interested in the story, ask me about how literally right before the girl stuck the needle through my nose decided to just start bleeding for the next 25 minutes. Seriously, like ask me about it, DM me on Twitter or some shit, because that was fun. That was a really great experience that I want to share with you all. Anywho, so today we're going to be talking about a project that I've been listening to for like the past 2-3 weeks, letting sink in slowly, and that is Now Only by Mount Eerie. You might know Phil Elverum from his work with the Microphones. They had an album called The Glow Part 2 in 2001 that was pretty widely acclaimed, and then Phil went on to do work with Mount Eerie, the name under which he releases his material now. Probably the most important piece of his history that it's essential for you to be familiar with in order to appreciate Now Only is A Crow Looked at Me, an album that came out last year in direct response to Phil's wife's death and pretty much every raw emotion that he felt in response to this event. And this album definitely shook me to my core. I mean, it ended up third on my year-end list from last year, and all that I really have to say about this album is that I think it's extremely rare that an artist fully embraces just straight up catharsis in the way that Phil did. I mean, I feel like a lot of artists might come close or kind of scratch the surface at it or deal in very dark subject matter the way that he does, but the way that he just did not hold back from expressing every single thing that he felt in response to such a traumatizing event is extremely commendable. And I kind of understand why it's pretty rare, even in something like music and art, when pain is brought up so commonly, why artists choose to kind of hold themselves back a little bit. I mean, it's definitely something that makes you extremely vulnerable, first of all, to throw out there, but also at the same time, sometimes you just assume that people don't really want to hear about it because it's a private thing to a lot of people. And I think the fact that expressing such extreme emotions in your everyday life is so shut off by people and you're told not to say these things, makes it harder for artists to throw it into their work, even though that is kind of the whole point. Like, the whole point of catharsis is to get it out there and not hold yourself back, and you can make art as disturbing and unedited as you see fit. And I definitely think that this was a source of comfort for Phil to throw it into a piece of art and make it something that he could focus on. So I am really glad that he chose to go in this direction, just honestly for his sanity, but also I really enjoy both A Crow Looked at Me and Now Only. I honestly think that this album is the perfect follow-up to A Crow Looked at Me, just in the fact that it follows the natural grieving process so well. I mean, A Crow Looked at Me was about the initial shock and just the tidal wave of sadness that enveloped him, and Now Only is about kind of living past that, but the fact that all of these memories just keep coming back and hitting you time and time again, and there's no way to escape it even so long after it's happened. Or I think it's been like a year and a half now, but still, it's like in the in-between area where he hasn't really moved on, and maybe he never will, but it's still like recent enough that he just keeps having these recollections of their life together over and over and over again, and that's kind of definitely seen in the sporadic nature of kind of the rambles that he trails off on in these tracks. And it just shows the outskirts of how your life can be dramatically altered by an event like this, even years after it happens. And although my biggest complaint with this album is the fact that the instrumentation is just a little forgettable, a little bit sleepy, I don't really think that that's the focus of this project. I mean, this is something that I've always kind of believed. I mean, feel free to disagree with me or whatever, but I honestly think that some albums are meant to be enjoyed for either their production or their lyrics and not both, and you don't necessarily need to have both to have a really good project. Like, I think that having both is the only thing that can logically get you to like a 9 or a 10 out of 10, but I think that if your lyrics are extremely well spoken, but your production is just like alright, that can still get you up to like a 7 or an 8 out of 10. Like, perfect example off the top of my head is Pure Comedy by Father John Misty. That production bored me to tears, but the lyrics on some of those tracks were just so incredible that it was hard to give it any less than what I ended up giving it, which was a 7.5. And I mean, it's still talked about all of the time on social media. Like, do you guys ever shut the fuck up about Pure Comedy? Like, Jesus Christ, am I the only one who's in the middle on this album? Whatever. Anywho, like, when I listen to an album, sometimes I'm paying attention to mostly the production, and sometimes I'm paying attention to mostly the lyrics. And if it's a rap album, maybe I'm focusing in on their flows or rhyme schemes or something like that. But basically my point is to criticize the instrumentation on this album for being a little bit boring when it's like pretty obvious that's not what Phil was focusing on just seems kind of dumb to me. I mean, yes, to make an extreme, bold statement that changes the face of music, obviously you're gonna have to have both, but I don't think that this album was meant to be that anyway. I honestly think that this album was just something that Phil needed to do for himself. So yeah, I mean, I don't really think that it's something that significantly takes away from the listening experience. I think you're supposed to listen to what Phil has to say above anything. Holy shit, how much background noise am I gonna have to deal with? It's fine, because in a month I'll be moving out to somewhere. I've also heard some people complain about this album because it deals with the same topics as A Crow Looked at Me, and it came out like right after A Crow Looked at Me, and it's just like, you know, watered down version of A Crow Looked at Me, or I don't know, some bullshit like that. But anyway, I mean, I personally feel like, what the hell else is he gonna write about? Like, a year to 2 years after his wife died, the most important person in his life that you can tell from the way that he's written these albums that he was deeply, deeply in love with and invested in. Like, an event like that doesn't just go away after like a few months to a year. I mean, it continues to affect you. When he tries to dig deeper within himself for something to talk about in his next album, like, what the hell else do you think he's gonna reach for? Getting into the first track, this thing really touched me. I don't know if this is, I guess this is probably like my favorite track on the album, but it gets into some specific moments of their initial moments falling in love with each other. And this track so accurately captures the feeling of being a young adult, having finally found that one person that makes all of your past just shitty endeavors with relationships worth it and feel like nothing in comparison. And that initial magic can absolutely be felt in these lyrics. And Distortion is one of those tracks that kind of trails off and gets a little bit more rambly. It's kind of hard to say overall conceptually what this track was going for specifically, but two moments that absolutely touched me in the lyrics. First of all, the bit when he was talking about having been like 22 or 23 and independence just defining him, and just kind of like rebelling against the system of the world in a way by focusing on his work over like any relationship or any personal thing like that, so the world just could not take him. He felt completely invincible, and then the irony looking back on the fact that the world would kind of break him apart in this way. Pretty much at the end of the day, we're all vulnerable to the ways of the world like this, and that's pretty difficult to, I think, acknowledge to yourself. And then another thing that just like one of my favorite fucking lyrical moments that I've heard in so long is the part where he's on the plane when he was watching the movie about the lineage of daughters that had to deal with shitty parents that didn't really know what they were doing in raising them, and just overall kind of did a shitty job and put them through a lot of trauma, having grown up and then relating that to Genevieve. And I mean, I guess she had to deal with something similar when he said like, and she had black hair and freckles and pale skin just like you, and she told the hard truth and slayed the gods just like you. Like, his respect for his now dead wife is so apparent in these lyrics, and it just broke me apart, dude. Now Only is another one of those tracks that you can absolutely feel down to its core with every single thing that it brings up, especially the part where Phil is talking about playing these songs about his wife dying to a group of kids on drugs, not really taking the lyrics in or paying any attention to them. I thought this was a perfect metaphor for feeling completely alone in what you're thinking about and dealing with, and everyone around you is just in a completely different headspace and just not sympathizing with you at all. Also the part where Phil's looking around the hospital waiting room, acknowledging that all of these people are going through similar things as he is technically, but still feeling and not being able to help it that his devastation is unique. And that's honestly, I think, something that needs to be discussed more, the fact that so many people out there are dealing with the exact same things as each other, and yet people still think because they're the center of their own worlds and their own circumstances, and they might not personally know anyone dealing with the exact same thing as them, that their devastation is unique and no one else will ever understand, which just is not necessarily true. I think Earth is maybe the most instrumentally interesting track here. Lyrically, it maybe goes on for a little bit too long for what it actually has to say, but still the part where he was driving home with his wife's ashes and her necklace in a plastic bag kind of still hit me right in the feels, but I really like the way the distortion kind of fades into the softer guitar parts of this track, and then they get all soft and kind of fade into this ambience. I kind of wish that this versatility was utilized more in a greater variety of these tracks here. It's probably the one thing that does take away from it, although I did say that the lyrics here are the main point, the main thing you should be paying attention to. I still do think that there's a little bit of room within this album for a little bit more variation. And I think the most interesting thing about Two Paintings by Nikolai Astrup, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, not really familiar with that artist, is this transition from living, existing, breathing human being into nothing more than a memory that can never go back and change the things that they've said or done or ever exist in the world again. And even though it is obvious that that's the end fate of every single person that lives today as we speak, it's still pretty weird to think about the fact that someone who is so real and you live next to every day and you see them all of the time, one day will never be able to speak again. You'll never be able to see them again in the flesh. One day they won't exist anymore. It's something that's definitely brought up a lot, but not necessarily taken in by people a lot. And for those people who did know the person that died so personally, they have these memories that are so vivid and they feel like they probably just happened yesterday, but then they're never coming back at the same time. Another thing that really touched me about this song is when Phil said, "I wonder what new thing will carry me through this life now that you're gone," and how difficult I imagine it can be when you build your life along with someone else for that all to just be shattered at once, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can never get that person back again, and how one person can play such a role in your life that when they're gone, it's like, where do I turn to now? But through the natural course of things, I mean, I'm sure that Phil will find something else to focus on, make art about, but thinking about the fact that that's going to happen one day when you just experienced something that hit so close to home and just shook you right to your core is probably pretty strange. Crow Part 2 is a closer to this album and Phil getting into what it's like to raise his daughter without his wife there, and the fact that, you know, he knew his wife first and his daughter is literally like almost a product of her, and it's probably extremely weird to like kind of have her in this form almost, but like obviously they're not the same person. It's like having a piece of her exist while the actual being is gone. It's like he feels like his wife is alive or just should be alive, and he keeps saying like, I see you everywhere, but at the same time I don't see you anywhere anymore the more the time passes by. Fucking heartbreaking, bro. Anywho, this album had a lot of extremely, to me, compelling lyrical moments that actually made me consider what going through an event like this would do to your life and your everyday actions and thoughts, and I would probably give it like an 8 out of 10. I do think that instrumentally it could be a little bit more interesting, yes, I do admit that, but I think that lyrically this is just like worlds ahead of so much other music that I've heard, that it definitely deserves like at least an 8. So thank you so much for watching this review, and if you could subscribe that would mean a lot to me, and yeah, I will see you soon.